let me introduce you to Dr. Wave Nunnally. I met Wave Nunnally when I was a Bible college student years ago, and he was one of the professors at the school that I attended. He went on to also teach at Evangel University and at the Assemblies of God Theological Seminary. He continues to teach there. He's also served on the board of directors at Hebrew Union University and takes trips to Israel regularly. I'm sorry? I thought somebody said something to me. He takes trips to Israel regularly with groups. That's where Stephanie and I will be going this fall. And he has a ministry called Bible Unplugged. And so if you want to check out any of those trips or teaching videos, and he has dozens and dozens of really excellent teaching videos that are available at Bible Unplugged. He also has a YouTube channel that you can find if you just put his name into YouTube, and he has scores and scores of great teachings in there as well. Tonight, you have an opportunity, in my opinion, to hear from one of the best experts in first century life and literature in the world. One of the best experts in first century life and literature in the world. And so as we've been going through our series on the exile of the Jews, which is something that most people don't pay attention to in the Bible, but it takes up a huge amount of the biblical story when you begin to put it all together and see how often it's spoken about. So as we are chronologically working our way through the exiles, I thought it'd be worth our while to have Wave in the middle of the mix, give us a little bit of a break, and be able to welcome him. And so would you welcome Wave as he comes? And as you're welcoming Wave, let me also say a quick welcome to Ruby Mitchell. Ruby's mom is our campus pastor at Union, and Ruby has been working on some of the artwork that we're doing to update the kids area, and it's great to have her with us tonight, too.
Thank you.
Go for it, my friend.
Bless you.
Love you.
Thank you, Pastor Paul and Miss Stephanie and everybody else, and I appreciate you guys putting up with me. I can't believe that you have shown up for another force-feeding episode, which it will be, because I always I operate on the assumption that it takes a lot longer to overeat yourself to death than it does to starve to death. So I want everybody to go out well-fed. Fair enough? The other part of that is we are going to pile through a ton of stuff tonight. And I'm not interested. There will be no quiz at the end, no final exam, anything, no final paper. And so I want you to get the big picture of what is going on instead of getting lost in the weeds and the details and the specific Bible references and how does Ezekiel's language compare to Jeremiah's language. And that's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to go big picture. So this is us. It's Nunnally Institute. It's also Bible Unplugged, as Pastor Paul mentioned. Dr. Paul mentioned. You're in the club now. It means you can get away with anything. Not really. Not really. I can't get away with anything. So if you want videos, Wave Nunnally Facebook, Wave Nunnally YouTube. And there's how you spell it. I know there's lots of U's and N's and L's and stuff like that. But yeah, just Wave Nunnally YouTube, Wave Nunnally Facebook. All of the videos are free. Have at it. Enjoy it. Use it in your small groups. Use it in your own personal study times. Encourage your friends at your whatever club to take a look. Just enjoy. All right, so tonight we're going to be looking first at today's date. That's down here at the bottom, right? Today's date. We didn't even plan this, Pastor Paul. I promise neither one of us scheduled this intentionally for this night to fall on the conclusion of a day of mourning and fasting in Judaism called Tisha B'Av. You can look it up online. Basically, it is a remembrance of both temple destructions and consequent exiles that happened to the Jewish people after some invading army came and destroyed Jerusalem and destroyed the temple that happened to exist at two different times. So this is the day that they remember both temple destructions, the destruction of Solomon's temple in 587 BC, and then a whole millennium later, half a millennium later, the destruction of the Ezra, Nehemiah, Herod the Great, Jesus, Paul, 12 disciples temple that they knew in the New Testament times in AD 70. This one by the Babylonians, this one by the Romans, and it's a day of remembrance, mourning, and fasting. So we're talking tonight about exile and about restoration. What better day in the whole cotton-picking calendar, y'all? We had 64 chances of getting this one wrong, and we got it right. So you may have been wrong all along, but you're right tonight. All right, next. We are looking at a video of the city of Jerusalem. This is the city of David right here, just this little narrow finger. This is the Mount of Olives that you're seeing wrapping around Jerusalem on the east side. Here's the Kidron Valley. Here's the Temple Mount, right? Dome of the Rock. And this is where Solomon's temple was built and was destroyed in 587. This is where the temple of Ezra, Nehemiah, was rebuilt, which was eventually kind of renovated by Herod the Great and destroyed after the time of Jesus in AD 70 by the Romans. So we've rotated around from the south side of Jerusalem, looking up the city of David, that little narrow finger there, over onto the Mount of Olives, and we're looking at Jerusalem from the east, across the Kidron Valley here. So this is kind of what we'll be talking about some tonight, is the destruction of the temple, signaling the beginning of a new exile. All right? Here is the convent of or church and convent of the Ascension, marking where Jesus went up to heaven. And this area here is the area of Bethphage. You may remember where Jesus cursed the fig tree and where he was traveling between Bethany and Jerusalem on his last week, the last what we call Passion Week of Jesus' life. So there's a little bit big picture regarding Jerusalem. Let's show the next video and we'll do little picture. Here's the Western Wall, or the Wailing Wall it used to be called, and the Western Wall Plaza. And we kind of computer reconstructed that into what it looked like in Jesus' day, where the priests went across on a bridge. This is the pinnacle of the temple, and this is the Temple Mount here. This is one of the Hulda gates where Jesus would have come out of the temple. It was right there. And then another one of the Hulda gates that's right there where you go into the temple. So it's just like driving in the United States. If you're in England, all bets are off. But go in on the right, come out on the left. And then another computer-generated reconstruction of the temple. The Royal Stoa, where the buying and selling took place. Solomon's Colonnade, right here, where Jesus and the disciples taught. The Court of the Gentiles there in the middle. You just saw the Golden Gate dipped underneath the video there, maybe coming back up here again. There we go, Golden Gate. And this is the temple proper right here. So the court of the women, the court of the Israelites, the court of the priests inside, and the big marble box is over top of the Holy of Holies. And that's what the temple looked like in Jesus' day. Not in Solomon's day, not in Ezra's day, but in Jesus' day, it had been refurbished by King Herod the Great. Same guy who killed the babies in Bethlehem in Matthew chapter 2 had just really done a great job at expanding the Temple Mount and beautifying the Temple Mount. And this is what the temple looked like in the time of Jesus and John the Baptist and Paul and the disciples, etc. All right, so this whets your appetite a little bit, I hope, for this Tisha B'Av commemoration, remembrance of the two temple destructions, and we will refer to both of those tonight in our discussion of exile and restoration. Still with me? Bored yet? Just if so, just pretend. Fake it till you make it. Okay? Next. Okay, we're going to talk about two prophets of the exile, I know that there are others. For example, Isaiah talks about a coming destruction, and he talks about a coming restoration, especially from chapters 40 onward to the end of his book, to chapter 66. But what we're going to do is we're going to focus on two specific prophets of the exile and of the restoration, because these are the guys that give the lion's share of material, most of the material that we have from the prophetic word on what's happening in culture, what's going to happen because of the things that weren't going right, and God is going to bring a purging, a judgment, a refining, a purifying of his people, an exile, yes. But then the promise is for all these guys, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, is going to be a coming restoration after that period of refining, purifying, purging, pruning, etc. So the first one that we're going to look at is the prophet Jeremiah. And he's prophesying from the perspective of the land of Israel. Ezekiel will have been already taken to Babylon, because he was kind of in one of the top tiers of society as a priest, and he had been taken in a pre-exile, a proto-exile of what would the big one would come with Jeremiah and the rest of the people in 587 once the temple and the city was destroyed. So what does Jeremiah say? Has this house, which has been called by my name, become a den of robbers in your sight? Does that ring any bells? My house will be a house of prayer for all nations, Isaiah says. But Jeremiah, Jesus adds on, Jeremiah says, but you've turned it into a den of thieves. When did Jesus say that? He said that as he was cleansing the temple. So Jeremiah recognizes there's something going on that's wrong in the temple. The Dead Sea community of the Dead Sea Scrolls, John the Baptist did, Jesus did. Everybody's recognizing that there's a problem on the Temple Mount, and Jesus tries to address it, and they dismiss him. And they go on about their merry way, and then eventually, 40 years later, that temple that Jesus is talking about is destroyed by the Romans in AD 70. I'm going to do to my house, that's just a code word for temple, like I was glad when they said unto me, let us go to the house of the Lord, right? So I'm going to do to the temple, which is called by my name, in which you trust, as I did to Shiloh. Well, what's going on at Shiloh? That's where the tabernacle was. Remember the one that was built in the wilderness by Moses and Joshua and Aaron and crew, right? And so they bring that portable worship place representing the presence of God among his people. They brought that into the land with them. And eventually in Solomon's temple, it was incorporated, the tabernacle was incorporated into the sedentary, in place, built permanently temple of Solomon. I'm going to do what I did to Shiloh. Shiloh was in ruins. It was presumably destroyed by the Philistines. We don't know exactly what happened, but we think we know that it was the Philistines. So I'm going to destroy my temple, is what he's saying. And I'm going to cast you out of my sight as I've cast out all your brothers, all the offspring of Ephraim. Who is that? Those are the representing the northern tribes. They had been sent into an Assyrian exile back in 722, 150 years before Jeremiah's time. There was an exile by the Assyrians. Well, that wasn't new either, because really when Jacob and his sons went down to Egypt and they became enslaved for 400 years, that was a sort of an exile of sorts, because they were in the land. They were taken by famine out of the land, imprisoned, basically under the control of the Egyptians, serving as their slaves for 400 years, and then they went back to the land. They were restored to the land. So you've really got about 5 different major exiles and restorations. You got Jacob and his sons, then back to the land. You've got your Assyrian exile, and that's in 722. You've got Jeremiah's exile. That's in 586, 587. And then you've got another one that's coming after that with the Romans in AD 70. We'll get to that. Next. Jeremiah 5. The prophets prophesy falsely. The priests rule on their own authority. and my people love it so. We need to really fast forward past this one because that's a little bit too applicable for the modern day church. You know what I'm saying? I think you do. The people love it so. Make it slick and easy. But what will you do at the end of all of that? When you got that kind of leadership and you got people following like lemmings, in a cult of personality, what's going to be the end of that? Destruction, exile, bondage. It's a never fail kind of situation. That's an automatic equation for crash and burn. And I know you've seen it. You've seen it in your lifetime. We will see it again because human nature just doesn't change that much. Flee for safety, O sons of Benjamin, one of the tribes, from the midst of Jerusalem, because evil looks down from the north. A great destruction is coming. No doubt about it, Jeremiah is prophesying to his generation. His generation, destruction is coming because of all of this stuff. People behaving weirdly and unbiblically. Evil is looking down from the north, a great destruction. And even the comely and dainty Zion, daughter of Zion, I will cut off. Zion's a nickname for Jerusalem, exactly. Next slide. Now we're going to switch to Ezekiel. Ezekiel and Jeremiah are contemporaries. They're living at the same time. They just happened to be because Ezekiel had already been taken with other priests off into exile. They're living as contemporaries. They're living at the same time. Ezekiel in Babylon, Jeremiah in Jerusalem. And you got bookends for the Middle East, and they're both predicting the same thing, often using the same words. Ezekiel 34, Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. There's again a reference to the leadership, the kings, the princes, the priests, the Levites, the elders, etc. Prophesy against the shepherds of Israel, the leadership. Woe, shepherds of Israel who have been feeding themselves. Should not the shepherds feed the flock? You eat the fat, you clothe yourselves with the wool, you slaughter the fat of the sheep without feeding the flock. They're not feeding the flock, they're feeding on the flock. This is a leadership that's gone off the rails. And what have the people done? They didn't call it out, they followed that poor leadership. Next. Those who are sickly, you have not strengthened. That you've not healed the disease. The broken, you haven't bound up. The scattered, you have not brought back. No, but with force and with severity, you have dominated them. That's a manipulative, coercive, power-hungry leadership as opposed to a servant leadership. Who's the best example of servant leadership? Jesus is, absolutely. And he calls himself the good shepherd, exactly. They became food for every beast of the field, and they were scattered. That's what we're talking about as far as a dispersion or an exile. Next slide, please. My flock wandered, was scattered, no one to search or seek for them. My flock has become a prey, food for the beasts of the field for lack of a godly leader. But rather, the shepherds fed themselves and didn't feed my flock. Next. You push with the side and with the shoulder, and thrust at all of the weak with your horns. This is just a kind of an animal-like description of leadership that's gone off the rail. By the way, this is totally not my fault. If you're feeling uncomfortable, it's Ezekiel's fault. It's Jeremiah's fault. It's not my fault at all. These are not my words. All I'm doing is I'm just delivering the mail here tonight. The letter's already been written. So what am I going to do? I'm going to be against the shepherds, and I'll demand my sheep from their hand, and I'm going to make them cease feeding my sheep. I'm going to remove that godless, self-seeking, self-centered leadership model, and I'm going to replace it with another one. Keep watching, because he's going to tell you exactly which one it is. It's not me. It's not President Trump. There's another shepherd that's coming. And he's going to be a good, as you guys said, a good shepherd. I shall deliver my flock from their mouth that they may not be food for them any longer. Next slide. This is what the Lord God says. I myself am going to search for my sheep and seek them out. Does that sound like a story that Jesus tells about one lost sheep and about a shepherd that leaves the 99 and goes and looks for that one lost sheep, looking out for the benefit of that one individual, that one errant person, that one individual that just can't seem to bring themselves to bow the knee to servanthood to Jesus? He's still going to pursue them. He's still going to seek them out. His desire, his goal is to wrap his arms around them and to restore them to the flock and restore them to health and security. I'm going to feed them, and they will be on the mountain heights of Israel. Now he's starting to talk about restoration. Next. I'll lead them and I'll seek that which was lost, right? I'll bind them up, strengthen them, those that were sick, and I'll set up my one shepherd over them, my servant David. And he's not talking about reincarnation, y'all. He's talking about the son of David, the Ben David of all these other prophecies that go all the way back to the prophet Samuel, that there will be one on David's throne forever and ever and ever. And he's going to rule, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he's going to bring peace and justice. I know of only one. Y'all? One. He's the one cult of personality I am willing to follow. He will be their shepherd. How do you have it? Ezekiel 34, etc. Next. Now we're going to look at those same two prophets, Jeremiah and Ezekiel. And now they're going to turn into, instead of decreeing destruction and bringing of judgment and that kind of thing, the same two guys are going to bring this balance back to God's word. And he's going to talk about restoration. He's going to talk about renewal. He's going to talk about reconciliation between God and his people and return to the covenant blessings that he has placed on them in the past. Next, Jeremiah says, it'll be said, as the Lord lives who brought the sons of Israel out of the land of the north, that would be Babylon, right? The north, and all the countries where he'd banished him, I will restore them to their own land, which I gave to their fathers. Own land, their own land. I'm not just going to get them set free. I'm not just going to, like renew the covenant, like restore them to fellowship with me. I'm going to restore those promises that I made. Because in God's eyes, these are written in stone. They don't presto changeo. Goalposts aren't moving. This is a God who says, I promise this, and by God, no pun intended, I'm going to fulfill this. I am going to fulfill my word because I am a God of my word. Exactly. Most of the time, I feel like he takes his word a lot more seriously than we do. And I guess that's appropriate, though, right? Next. Jeremiah 29. I will restore your fortunes, gather you from all the nations, from all the places I've driven you. We're talking about I've exiled you, but I am holding out a promise to you that I am going to, who I have exiled, I am going to restore. I'm going to renew. And I will bring you back to where? To the place from where I sent you into exile. Where were they exiled from? The nation of Judah, right? The southern kingdom, or the land of Israel, yes? And where's he going to bring them back to? It's not just any old place, but I'm going to bring you back to what I promised your forefathers originally. I told them, I'm going to chastise you. If you go astray, I love you enough to discipline you. But the other side of it is, I also love you enough to bring you back into relationship with me and restore my glory in your midst and restore my blessing, my presence, etc., and restore you to your proper place, back to the place from where I sent you into exile. The reason I bring up so many of these passages is because there are lots of people out there, including in the church, who say, well, it was because of the child sacrifice and the false prophets, and it was because of the immorality, it was because of the idolatry and all this stuff that God said, that's it, I'm done with y'all. And between God and Israel, the covenant was broken at the time of the Babylonian exile, and he's finished with them. My question is, well, then how do you explain the presence of Esther and Ezra and Nehemiah in the Bible, of Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi? And all of those people all of those books represent a post-exile situation, a post-exilic situation. So you've got a half a dozen books that are written about God's restoring, God's fulfilling these promises uttered through these prophets, that he's going to, that which he has exiled, he's going to restore. Back to the same relationship, back to the same covenant, and back to the same location. Next. For neither Israel nor Judah has been forsaken by his God. This is Jeremiah. He's the same guy who said, God is going to body slam you for all of the cruddy stuff, all of the acts of disobedience, all of the rebellion and mutiny. And yet now he's saying, they've not been forsaken. I've not taken my eye off of them. I am not going to break my word. I will not be a God who fakes right and runs left. I will not be a God who allows the goalpost to move. I will not be a God who allows one of my good promises to fall to the ground unfulfilled. I will keep my word. I'm going to keep my word, irregardless. Even in the New Testament, if we are unfaithful, he will remain faithful because he cannot deny himself. Same message, both testaments. Same God, both testaments. Same word, both testaments. Next. I will gather you from the peoples and assemble you out of the countries from among which you have been scattered, and I will give you, how about that? Is that specific enough for us? I love these guys. I try to anyway. No response, so I'm going to keep moving on. I love these guys that say, well, you know, that was then, this is now. Really? So like God just changed. He got into an anger management program, and he came out a new and improved God. He's just evolving to a better and better God, Yeah, like he needs that, right? We do, he doesn't. He says, I'm Yahweh, I don't change. And the grass withers and the flower fades, but my word stays the same. Those are two goalposts and two targets that won't move. That's a guarantee. He promised the fathers the land of Israel. He put them into the land of Israel. He removed them from the land because of their disobedience and because they were rebellious children who needed discipline. And then he brought those purified, cleansed, rededicated, recommitted, reconnected, forgiven people back to where he had promised when he began the whole process. He's the same God. Human nature sure hasn't changed. I wouldn't expect God to either. Next slide. And you will know that I am Yahweh when I bring you into the land of Israel, into the land that I swore to give to your forefathers. He promised that. He gave that as a promise. Nobody held a catapult to his head or slingshot or bow and arrow. Okay? Nobody held it. Nobody was twisting God's arm. He volunteered this to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And when he did, he used about 3 different adjectives. He said eternal, everlasting, and forever. And at different places, those words show up, and it's always connected there to land promise. So he's just not going to back up from that because it is culturally or socially appropriate now to dogpile on Israel. I mean, we may as well go ahead and kick them when they're down, right? That's not God's way. So his promise is forever, eternal, and everlasting. And that's not my fault either, y'all. And I'm sorry about it if that sits poorly with you. But I'm not going to short shekel you into giving you my word watered down so it's more palatable, and then it ends up getting you in trouble later on. This is God, and this is his word, and that's just the way that it is. And if it isn't comfortable, sorry. It's to see if you can work another deal on the side, but good luck with that, right? Next, Ezekiel, again, when I gather the house of Israel from among the peoples where they're scattered, I'll manifest my holiness in them. I am going to use them to show forth my glory to the nations. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, that's the same call that's on us. That's the same. We're supposed to be representatives. We're supposed to be his ambassadors to this earth. Believers and unbelievers out there, they're supposed to be seeing Jesus in us, and we're supposed to be reflecting his glory to the nations. And boy, that's attractive. Legalism isn't, and just simple conservatism isn't, and being mean isn't, but just reflecting that glory and that nature of God, that is so attractive. I mean, we saw it with Jesus when he was here in the flesh. Every time you turn a page of the New Testament, and multitudes were following, and multitudes, and the crowds were, and they couldn't get anybody in the house because of the crowd gathered around. That's the kind of Jesus that we are supposed to be representing. We are supposed to be that fragrant aroma of Christ. One, an aroma from life to life. For those who won't respond, won't repent, an aroma from death to death, but we're supposed to be that fragrant aroma. Hallelujah. And then they will live in their land that I gave to my servant Jacob. Not Ishmael, not Esau, not the Romans, not the Americans, not the British. The descendants of Jacob. And again, sorry that the Bible's that specific, but hey, at least we can know we got our marching orders. We know where this thing is headed. God has not, hidden things or put stuff in such strange language that we can't understand it. It's just right there out in front of God and everybody. Next. As another exile. And I got about 9 minutes to do this. So you ready to run where Jesus walked? That's what we do when we're in Israel all the time anyway. So I get you good and broken in here, get the skids greased, and that would be you and me, when we get over there into the land of Israel, you are going to be running where Jesus walked too. It'll be all good. You won't even break a sweat, especially in November. Another exile and restoration is coming. We had one, down in Egypt and back in the land of Israel. We had Assyrian captivity, Babylonian captivity, and that's Jeremiah and Ezekiel and that kind of thing. There's another captivity that's in Jeremiah and Ezekiel's future, so far away that they've got to have, telescopic lens to be able to see it. It's so far away. And it's happening in the time of the disciples, in the lifetime of the disciples of Jesus. Let's take a look at that. And now I'm going to introduce you to some literature that maybe is a little bit off-road. It's okay. Just reach over there and click it over into 4-wheel. You'll be fine. And in the writings of the rabbis, the early rabbis from around the time of Jesus, they say the shops of the sons of Hanun. Now, Hanun is Annas, one of the high priests that Jesus was taken to when the night he was betrayed in the Garden of Gethsemane. The first high priestly figure that he was taken to, according to the Gospel of John, was Annas, A-N-N-A-S, Annas. In Hebrew, it's Hanin or Hanun. So the sons of Annas were destroyed 3 years. The shops. Question for you. What are the high priests doing in business? I thought that they were supposed to be interceding and sacrificing and representing the people to God and vice versa, right? The shops of the sons of Hanun were destroyed 3 years before the destruction of the temple because they failed to properly tithe from their profits. They said, we're priests, we're exempt. Nobody's exempt. Next, we're talking about this last temple that was destroyed by the Romans in AD 70. 40 years before the temple was destroyed, the Sanhedrin was exiled from the chamber of hewn stone and seated itself in the shops. What? Shops on the Temple Mount, doing business, standing between God and the altar, jacking up the price for sacrificial animals, disqualifying the animals that they had drug on a rope or a piece of leather all the way from the Negev in the south or Galilee in the north, all the way to Jerusalem, only to be told, I'm sorry, that one's got a little nip on the ear. Oh, that one, the hoof's kind of cocked out to the left a little bit, y'all. So you're going to have to get rid of that one and buy one of ours. And then they said, well, but you can't use your money, not the money you brought with you. Go back over there and get your money changed, and then come back over here. So they go over to the money changer. Money changer rips them off. Then they come back over here and they get ripped off again for this substitute animal that they have to sacrifice. That's what the shops are all about. Has my Father's house, which is supposed to be a house of prayer for all nations, become a den of thieves? Jesus says. But he got that from Jeremiah. What he's saying to them is the same mess that got Jeremiah's generation sent into exile for 70 years. That same attitude, that same approach to life, that same kind of interfering in the pure worship of God with all of your shenanigans going on here in the shops and with the money changers and the buyers and sellers of animals and stuff. You're standing in the way. You're standing between me and the people that I'm trying to reach. And I will not have it. Wouldn't have it in Jeremiah's day, and I'm not having it in AD 30 or whenever it was that Jesus came in. And twice in his lifetime, early in John and late in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, cleanse this temple. And he says, get out of here. Not appropriate behavior in the house of God. Facilitate my worship of me. Don't stand between me and the people that I'm trying to represent, trying to reach. Seated themselves in the shops. Next. First and Second Maccabees are in what are called the Apocrypha. I had some stuff in First Maccabees, didn't have time for it, so we're doing just Second Maccabees. Jason, the brother of Onias, obtained the high priesthood by corruption, promising the king, this is a Greek pagan king, 360 talents of silver. I'm going to buy that office. You ever read that in the Old Testament about Aaron or any of his sons or descendants? You never read that in the Old Testament. This is between the testaments, and this is what it has come to. The high priesthood is being purchased for money. 2 Maccabees 4. Menelaus secured the high priesthood for himself, outbidding. Oh, now, so it's a bidding war, huh? Who can gouge for the most shekels? Because then when you get that high priesthood, man, that's a cash cow. Remember the temple, the bought sacrifices, the money changers, and all of that kind of stuff? This is what's happening in the Gospels with Jesus is not happening in a vacuum. This is real stuff. This is a real historical situation that can be demonstrated not just by New Testament, but by reference to stuff outside the New Testament that was not written by Christians. This is between the testaments. 100 BC, a century before Jesus is born, secured the high priesthood for himself, outbidding Jason by 300 talents of silver. Isn't that beautiful? Don't you know that just pleases, warms the heart of God? Next. Another rabbinic text. The second temple was destroyed because they bought the high priesthood with money. There it is. There's your, headline for the newspaper, Jerusalem Post of the day. Bought the high priesthood. Can you imagine the attitude, the response of a holy God to that kind of stuff? Next. On what account did the priest of the second temple go into exile? We're talking about not the Babylonian destruction of 587 BC. We're talking about the Roman destruction of 70 AD. Why did the priest of that second temple, not Solomon's, the Ezra, Nehemiah, Herod temple, go into exile? They loved money and they hated one another. Go ahead, next. In the second temple, they were loving wealth and were hating each other and for some reason it got knocked off, for no reason. Loved money, hated each other for no reason. Next. Josephus. You know who Josephus was, right? First century Jewish historian, lived in the land of Israel, writing in the same Greek as the New Testament. It's as good a source as you could ask for outside the Bible itself. This is what Josephus said. The high priest Ananias, who, by the way, is mentioned in the book of Acts, had a flair for making money. Really? I thought he was supposed to be representing the people and representing God. High priest they would go to the threshing floors and take by force the tithes that belonged to the common priests, he being a high priest, beating those who refused to give. And the high priests were guilty of the same practices as his slaves, and no one could stop them. At that time, the common priests were supported by the tithes, were now starving to death. That would be a common priest like Zechariah, the father of John the Baptist. You imagine starving somebody like that to death? And yet they were doing it. Why? Because they loved money and they hated each other. Next. Woe to me because of the house of Boethus. That's the people of the Sadducees. Woe to me for their staves, their walking sticks. Woe to me because of the house of Hanin, and that's Annas again, same guy in the New Testament. Woe to me because of their whisperings, because they are sowing seeds of discord. He did this. I heard him say that. Can you believe he thinks this? Keep going. Woe to me because of the house of Katros, and we have that written in stone, the house of Katros, another high priestly family. Woe to me because of the house of Ishmael ben Phiabi, because of their fists, because they're high priests. Their sons are treasurers, their sons-in-law are temple overseers, and their servants beat the people with sticks. It's the same thing Josephus was just talking about, just a little bit more amplified. By the way, this is what nepotism will get you. Next. In Jerusalem, there have been at least 6 of the homes, really they're palatial mansions of these high priestly families, found on the hill that rises up from on the western side of the temple. And some of them are more than 6,000 square feet in size, multi-storied. They even have mosaic, you know what a mosaic floor is? Mosaic floors in the basement of these homes. Unbelievably posh. Look at the stone water jar for the storage of water. Next. More here. They have their own grinding wheels and that's a tabletop made of stone. This is total stoneware. They could have wood and they could have had it made of other types of material, but these guys are having professional stone workers to build furniture for them in their homes. Next, because they could. Look at these stone water pots. Remember in John 2, Jesus went to a wedding at Cana, and there were 6 stone water pots for the waters of ritual purification. Remember that story? That's real stuff. That's not make-believe. It's not pretend. It's not like John had a bad day at the office. We found these. And where are all these things found? In those priestly mansions. These guys were living like fat cats. I mean, they were the upper echelons, and they collaborated with the Romans, and they helped to keep the people down, and they extorted taxes and tithes and everything else, and they were selling all this stuff in the temple. And here's some of that mosaic floor right here. Next. Here are some of the stone weights they were using because they wanted to make sure they got their fair share. They wanted to make sure they were able to weigh out those precious metals, silver and copper and gold and that kind of thing. And sometimes you can look under the underneath side of these, and they bored holes in there and they filled them up with lead to weight them down. They're always tipping the table in their favor and against the favor of the people who were just there to worship God. Next. Here's that Beit Katros inscription, that guy that we talked about, one of the priestly families. Next. All this is first century evidence. This is all first century evidence from the time of Jesus. Here are the Tyrian shekels, 95% pure silver. And they required that these shekels that were minted in Tyre, outside the land of Israel, with pagan symbols and people's faces on them that were forbidden by God's word. No image, no molten or no graven image of anything above or on or below the earth. And yet that's what what they were calling the shekel of the sanctuary in Jesus' day. These guys were into it. They were all in on this. Look at this. The pagan Roman eagle symbol right there on the Tyrian shekel. And they loved it. Next. This is the tomb, the family tomb of the high priest Annas, that Hanun or Hanin that we've been talking about in the rabbinic sources. Let's go inside. Can you imagine? This is chiseled out of solid rock, solid bedrock. And you've got a rosette on the ceiling, and you've got these individual burial sites. This tells you that it's 1st century AD. And we've got the very tomb of one of the guys who ended up sending Jesus to the cross, Annas the high priest. Next. Now we've also got a picture here of Caiaphas's bone box, ossuary, or coffin. And we know that because on this side here it says Yosef bar Kepha, Joseph the son of Caiaphas. This is Caiaphas who turned Jesus over to the Romans. Next. Isaiah says, though, this is all of this planning and scheming and people living lives that were so fallen and out of kilter with God's word. And Isaiah says, can a nation be born in a day? Can a nation be brought forth all at once? And I think the answer is yes, and especially after 1948. Like May of 1948. Next. Jesus says, from the fig tree, learn its lesson. When its branches have already become tender and put forth its leaves, you know that summer is near. And when you see all these things coming to pass, know that he is near at the very door. He's saying things are beginning to wrap up when you see the fig tree blossom. Next. In the book of Revelation, when everything is wrapped up, when everything is at its final stage of being restored, there's going to be a destruction. And the Romans did exile the people and destroy the temple, destroy Jerusalem and whatever. But there's going to be a new Jerusalem coming down out of heaven. Well, this hasn't even happened yet. Is this exciting to you that we're in the middle of this big historical continuum? And the final exile has not been complete. It started. There's parts of it that are there that are undeniable, but there's an even greater part of that restoration yet to come. The new Jerusalem. And by the way, it's not the new Dallas. It's not the new Chicago or New York. It's not the new LA or Sacramento. It's the new Jerusalem coming down out of heaven in the city of my God. Right? Next. Almost done. God, the holy city, the new Jerusalem coming down out of heaven, and God himself will be among them. That's the whole goal, is for God to dwell in and among his people. And then the last one, the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven, and the names were written on them that are the 12 tribes of the sons of Israel. I would love to say, you know what? The new Jerusalem, it's going to be Washington, Missouri. The Mormons think it's going to be Independence, Missouri, but they're not right either, right? It's going to be the 12 tribes of the sons of. Do you see how this comes full circle? And this is just as real as it gets, guys. God is not going to change because of our politics. He's not going to change because of majority rule. We don't get to vote in this thing. He's got a plan, and he's going to work it, and I'm so blessed to be a part of it. How about you? Huh? Have you ever felt like you were exiled from God? Have you ever felt like that he had turned his face? I want you to take courage from the words of Jeremiah, Ezekiel, the New Testament, Jesus himself, and all the way to the book of Revelation, that, if God chastens us, it is for a good purpose. He has plans. And what he pushes, he restores. What he exiles, he returns, he renews. His covenant, he's constantly wanting to renew with us. So you are a part of this exile restoration. If you've ever felt like that before, you're not alone in it, right? And if you've ever wanted to be fully restored, you're not alone in that either. And God has those kinds of promises for us. I am so thankful for that. I am so blessed. So let me pray for you, and then we're going to do whatever Pastor Paul says that we're supposed to do next, because I'm following him. I don't know about you.